Welcome back to Where is the Money? So apparently the money is not with the economy, the U.S. economy to be exact. There's been some reports and data released about the state of the economy. We had the CPI report that wasn't favorable to the Trump administration's economy, and then we had some other reports that came out that placed the inflation rate somewhere around 2.7 or 3%, which is not great.
70% say the administration isn't focusing enough on lowering prices. 61% say it's focusing too much on tariffs. And 62% say Trump's policies are driving up the costs of food and groceries. The issue matters. 56% say inflation plays a major role in how they evaluate Trump's presidency. Other national surveys tell the same story, which is why Trump's overall approval rating remains in the low 40s.
As of recently, we have a Wells Fargo report. Wells Fargo is sounding the alarm for a possible recession. That's right, a recession, the R word.
Let's break it down. Wells Fargo just came out with their economists with their own analysis. And what they're worried about is an index that for the last 60 years, when it hits rock bottom or drops, indicates we're heading into a recession or we are in a recession. And that is the percentage increase or decrease in disposable income, discretionary spending by households on services. Not goods, not buying things at the store, services, your gym membership, your streaming services, the things that you use your discretionary income, the money left over, if you have any.
They did their own data, and they've been tracking some stats here and some indicators, and those indicators are pointing at the way things are going. A recession is definitely on the horizon. Let's see what the data says.
Here's what the Wells Fargo analysts had to say about this. Tim Quinlan and Shannon Grind for Wells Fargo, leading economists, said they dismissed the false narrative that the tariffs for Trump are having no effect or a benign effect, pointing out that consumer spending data has actually been revised much lower than earlier reports. It never quite rang true, their report said, that consumer spending was completely unfazed by the sudden implementation of tariffs, they wrote. This mirage was sustained by initial estimates of GDP growth, gross domestic product growth, that pegged the pace of inflation at a certain amount. What they're saying is that even the inflation number that Howard Lutnick, you just heard, is bragging about, don't worry, everybody, 2.7%. Enjoy it. You come up with another 2.7%, even though you didn't get a raise, or you lost your job, or you lost your hours, or they've downsized you, or you're unemployed, or you lost your third job or your second job. Enjoy the inflation.
Now the banks have been back and forth with their indications of the recession. We had JP Morgan over there. They put out their recession indicators, feeling like it was possible, and then they reduced it. Now Wells Fargo jumps in there with their own indicators. Either way, the banks in Wall Street seem to be concerned about the possible recession. Some people say, hey, the Dow was at an all-time high. The Wall Street is doing well. Stocks and companies are doing well. All the companies are doing well. What are we talking about with this recession talk? Well, Wall Street does not always reflect the health of the economy. So a lot of economists separate any indicator from Wall Street to Main Street. Those are two different things.
Has anyone else noticed that the right-wing media, no doubt in an effort to disguise how disastrous Trump's tariff policies have been for our country, keep pointing out that the Dow is at an all-time high? And to be fair, they're right about that. What they're not telling you is that the rate of growth in the stock market has slowed to a crawl since Trump took over. The last day of the Biden presidency, the Dow hit an all-time high of 44,000 and change. Today, it's closing at 44,500 and change. So in the 6 months Trump has been in office, the Dow has gained around 400 points, which means the Dow has increased by less than 1% in that time. The last 6 months of the Biden presidency, the Dow increased by just under 4%. And you can bet that these far-right, in-the-bag pundits know this. It's simple math. They ignore it because they could care less about the almost non-existent growth of the average American's 401k. All they cared about when they elected Trump was getting that nice, fat tax cut.
Because Wall Street could have record highs and then people still be struggling in this economy. So my big thing is people and economists and public figures and politics are always back and forth with recession, no recession. Do the word even matter? All we're really trying to distinguish is the economy better or worse? And the recession seems to be the anchor point of better or worse. So whether they can technically define it by the GDP, we're in a recession, what people feel in their everyday life in the middle class and the lower working class, it's the same. The unanimous conclusion and consensus is they are feeling pinched financially. The credit is tightening, the interest rates are higher, people are priced out of the rental and mortgage markets. Jobs are laying off, whether they call it efficiency or not. Needless to say, the working class, middle class are having difficulty keeping the same standard of life, even though nothing has really changed on what they're doing and the productivity that they've done and contributed to the economy.
So I just went into Kroger and I got 4 Alani's, a bag of Takis, a 12-pack of Gatorade, and 2 racks of ribs, and it was $73. Can you tell me how that makes sense? Literally 3 bags, and it was $73. Like, we can hydrate ourselves, we can eat meat for one day for a family, have some chips for some lunch, and get some energy for 4 days. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Like, how are people doing it? How are people doing it? Like, I don't get it. You know, people come on here slamming people because they get help with food stamps, and, you know, I know there are people that abuse the system and all, but, you know, if you truly need help, get it, because I don't know how people do it. I really don't. It's sad. It's sad.
So do Trump get the blame? Things in the reports and the feeling of the economy not looking great. Or Trump's not the blame. It was already in play before he got there. Either way, put your comments below. Let's talk about it. This is Where Is the Money? Talk to you soon.